Hey everyone, David Ryshpan here again with you on YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Today it is more about synth bass. This is the second episode in what'll be a three-part series about synth bass and left-hand bass. If you haven't watched the first video, I'll link it up there. So last time we talked about the which sound and which patch I use and how I've programmed it on my controller for my left-hand bass gigs. And today we're going to talk about the how and the why, the more philosophical things you need to think about when you're playing left-hand bass, and the three different roles I have fulfilled as a left-hand bassist or a synth bassist on these three different gigs. If you enjoy content like this, if you enjoy the videos I've been posting, please click like and subscribe, all the little buttons below the video. It really indeed helps the channel, and it'll let you know when part 3 of this series goes up as well. All right, let's dive in. So as I mentioned in the previous video, I had 3 synth bass, left-hand bass gigs with 3 very different artists. One was with the Senegalese artist Sahad. The second one was a tour with the Polish jazz guitarist Wojtek Justyna. And the third gig in this series is actually coming up very soon, next week, with the multi-instrumentalist Andre Galamba. And so I'm playing left-hand bass, and beyond the big genre differences among all 3 of those gigs, my role as a left-hand bassist, synth bassist, is quite different as well. And what it requires of me mentally and physically are different demands. So I wanted to break all of those down for you in this video. So the first example with the artist Sahad, I had very little notice that I was going to cover the gig on synth bass for various reasons. And Sahad plays a lot of rhythm guitar, and there's a couple of songs with tracks, and there are keyboards in the tracks. So it became very clear to me that my priority was going to be thinking like a bass player and devoting all my energy and attention to the bass lines, and I would catch whatever I could in my right hand comping. The other challenge with Sahad's music is that it's a very guitar driven music and very guitar driven or idiomatic to electric bass. The lines are very idiomatic to electric bass, I should say. And so, for example, there's a lot of repeated notes that I personally don't find work super well on synth bass. And I was just tasked with adapting the bass lines as quickly and as accurately as I could, given the limitations of the instrument or the role that mini moog bass, synth bass plays in a band compared to electric bass. So we decided, myself and Sahad, that I would maybe drop some of the right hand, some of the keyboard parts, and leave that to him on guitar, or leave it to the tracks, and really just devote myself to playing the bass lines. There are a lot of locked or unison grooves, and so I just doubled the grooves in both hands. For example, the tune Irafama goes into this long section at the end, this long up-tempo section at the end, and the line is this. Tempo, it's not, those repeated notes are not always going to speak as clearly on synth bass as they do on electric bass. So I did simplify the line a little bit. really the priority was staying on the line. In other tunes, I really thought like a bass player and played very simple comping. Sahad is very specific about his bass lines. He plays most of the instruments on the record, and so he's very specific about the bass line and the bass feel. So I tried to cop that as much as I could, and the keyboard parts kind of took the back seat. With Wojtek Justyna, it's a more traditional organ trio way of playing left-hand bass and keyboards, and my role is very different. I don't have necessarily specific bass lines. I did have specific melodies to play and specific comping to play, and in that case, I treated it the way I would treat, a standard organ trio gig, where I'm improvising in both hands, and I'm going to put a caveat there that I'm not entirely improvising with both hands. I'll explain this more in the next video where I break down walking bass in more detail, but something that really stuck with me in getting my left-hand bass together, there are two pieces of advice that have really stuck with me in terms of shaping how I conceive of left-hand bass, how I execute left-hand bass. The first one comes from the organist Vanessa Rodriguez, now based in Rio. And when I took a lesson with her years and years ago, the guiding principle of all of this is you never let the bass line fall apart. You never let the bass line drop. And so that is my guiding light, my guiding rule for all three of these examples. You can never let the bass line drop. You can never let the groove drop. And the second thing I got from the pianist, Montreal pianist Tori Butler, when we were talking about walking bass lines, and he said, you don't have to be improvising all the time. And what he meant by that, and I'll get into this in the next video, is you find pathways. I don't remember if Tori called them pathways or if I called them pathways. But you basically find one or two ways to connect each chord or to connect each section, and then you just recycle those maybe two variations. So you're not 100% improvising, like playing a new bass line every single time. You've figured out a couple of ways to get from point A to point B to point C, and you're just stitching those together so your left hand is super solid. And then that permits my right hand to be freer and do what I need to do improvisationally, and being able to respond to Wojtek, being able to respond to Shane, the drummer. And you'll see there's a mix in the tunes. There's a mix of written parts, either for the bass or for the melody and the chords. And then there's parts, especially in the solo sections, where I am free to totally improvise. The third example that is coming up with the multi-instrumentalist Andre Galamba, and a kind of additional challenge that I didn't have on the other two gigs, is that Andre is playing bass. And I only take over synth bass when he switches to guitar. So there are some tunes in the set where he starts by playing bass, and then when he switches to guitar, I start playing bass. And the challenge there, or my responsibility there, is that I can't disrupt the groove for the drummer and the percussionist. I'm taking over. Andre is passing me the baton. And so my sound, my articulation, and my bass line all have to be similar to Andre. I can't just start playing with a completely different feel, completely different articulation. It's already different enough going from electric bass to synth bass. But in my mind, I'm trying to keep it as close to Andre's playing as I can. So those are the three different things you have to be aware of when you're taking on a synth bass gig. Is it a parts gig where you have to learn specific bass lines? Is it a more improvisational, open kind of situation where you get to improvise for the majority of it? And then is it a situation where you're only playing synth bass for a portion of the gig and you're picking up the slack from your bassist or another musician who's playing bass? And all three of those things kind of require your attention go to different details, I guess is the best way to summarize it. You need to be aware of different things. Your focus and your attention need to be on different things. I hope that helps. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will link all the artists in the description below. Andre Galamba's launch concert is September 30th here in Montreal at Verboute. If you're in the area, come get a ticket and say hello. Thank you so much for watching. My name is David Ryshpan. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.